Today's guest started with one Tesla in a college dorm room. Then he went on to build a national EV sharing platform with over 3,000 vehicles in 50 cities. Then he walked away from two Silicon Valley term sheets, survived COVID with $500 in the bank account, and somehow runs a safer operation than the entire traditional car rental industry. Rei Vardi is a unique entrepreneur in that what separates him from any other disruption story that you might hear is that he hasn't taken a single dollar from venture capital and he's never needed to. So today we dig into the story of what makes Ray, what he's had to overcome, and the lessons he learned along the way. Ray, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Leo. I'm so excited to talk to you.
So tell us, what's been the most significant lesson you've learned this past year?
I think that over this past year, you probably hear this from a lot of, entrepreneurs, but I think that I've come to realize just how important good judgment is in any kind of leadership position, any kind of executive space. I think that this past year, more than really any other one, we've just seen so much change in terms of productivity, AI, the kind of capabilities, skills that are coming into the market, the speed at which things move. And I really find that I do less and less actual work and more deciding. And I've just realized that, that's the thing that I should just be focusing on the most. It's if you make 5 really good decisions a year, that's probably way better than any kind of productive output that you could do.
That's what Warren Buffett said, right? Just make a couple good trades a year and he's good. And it's interesting because when you get up to that certain level, it becomes more and more important the quality of decisions that you make. I was thinking about this actually, like with the rise of AI and kind of like the world just becoming so connected that offshore workers they're like super integrated into the workflow. Like thanks to COVID, remote work is totally possible. So that gets us as entrepreneurs like so much leverage into the kinds of companies that we can build and like what we can do, the value we can bring to the marketplace with like limited resources. But then it becomes super important, like the decisions that you make, your output, how you think, because AI is not going to replicate that. No one else is going to think like you do, right?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, where you decide to put your effort, Naval Ravikant has this, very, very hyper specific approach to like how to succeed. And he's like, do the one thing that is most authentically you, because you're not competing in any other space, right? If you can figure out what it is that you specifically know, what it is that you're specifically good at, like AI can come and fill in the rest, and not just AI, overseas work and, all these tools that are on the market now that they weren't available when you started. They weren't available when I started. But now if we were to start again, we'd be able to go so much further, so much faster without needing to raise a bunch of money, without needing to do a lot of things. And I just think that the one thing that I've always consistently been disappointed in AI is whenever I ask it to make a decision, I'm always like, this is really stupid. This was not, this is not the way to do it. And I
Yeah.
don't think that that's going to change very much anytime soon.
Yeah, I think it's just like A, it just tends to agree with you a lot, and B, it doesn't fully grasp the context. Like you can never give it enough context, like to understand. And like if you do, like great, but like it might know too much too.
Yeah, it's a processing. I see it as a processing problem, right? Like
Mhm.
your calculator, just your calculator app on your phone is infinitely more intelligent than you in the very limited context window that it has, which is just like a couple of numbers that you give it. But while you might not have the processing power of that calculator, you've got an entire lifetime of context. You've got experiences and lessons and connections and all these different pieces of your life that integrate that are they're irreplaceable. And so that context is where your power actually lies.
Hmm.
And so it kind of comes back, like use your context to make good decision making because the actual execution is not that important anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, you get more and more leverage on execution, and yeah, that's very well said. Changing topics real quick. I mean, just take us back to college. I mean, how did you get this idea to start Eon? What were the early days like?
Yeah, it's actually a very stupid story. I'm not gonna lie. I really kind of stumbled into this place. At no point in my life did I think I would be an entrepreneur. I always thought that I'd be some kind of scientist. I was like kind of a super nerdy, geeky kid. I went into school for biomedical engineering. I thought that I'd be doing, working in a lab doing research my whole life. And basically what happened was towards the end of my college career, my dad had this Tesla. It was like a 2015 Model S. It was one of the first Teslas that they had back when Tesla was like like a shiny new object that nobody even knew what to do with. And he was going to sell it. But I had such like an attachment to this car. I thought it was so cool. And the whole mission behind it, like, EVs, saving the planet, that I was like, Dad, listen, give me the car. I'll find a way to pay it off you. I'll pay the monthly lease. Just don't let go of it. And so it sat there, parked outside of my dorm room, eating $1,000 into a wallet that had nothing coming into it. And as a side project, I was like, let's start renting this out and see if I can pay that back. The kicker was this was the worst decision I'd ever made at the time,
Hmm.
but that's how it all started. It was just kind of like as a joke.
Yeah. How was it a bad decision?
Oh my God. I mean, like one of the first things you learn is like why people don't rent out their cars to people.
Oof.
It was like a really obvious one in hindsight, but at the time I'm like, okay, a lot of people in the community want to try it. It's going to be great. We can all share a car. What ended up happening almost immediately is that, my entire life was disrupted. I was skipping classes to hand off the keys to people. I was being woken up in the middle of the night with like inane questions about how do I charge this thing? How do I even turn it on? And the absolute worst part was this car was just getting abused left and right. It was getting scratched, smoked in, dented, brought back late, if brought back at all, frankly. Somebody used my car to rob a bank one time. Like everything, like literally everything that one time, like bullet casings were found in the car when I brought it back. I was like, what is going? So I was just like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Here's the thing. What you realize very quickly is like, there's no such thing as renting out your car to someone. There's no like sharing a car. You really just become the world's tiniest car rental company with one car. There's no such thing as like a part-time renting out your car. It's a full-time gig.
So how did you transition from like, all right, like maybe this wasn't as easy as I thought to like, all right, I'll make it into a company.
So it was a convalescence of a couple of factors. The first one is that like I just wasn't really. I graduated college and I was working in a biomedical lab in a hospital in Boston, and I was so miserable. Like the bureaucracy and the way that things moved, and that nothing felt like it felt like nothing I was doing mattered. I was just so depressed at my job there, and simultaneously, this car was just eating away money that I didn't have. And I was embarrassed. I had this like chip on my shoulder. I wanted to prove to my dad that I could do it. And so I was like, you know what? It's now or never, baby. It's like I'm never going to be this young with this few responsibilities. This is my one chance. If I'm going to start a company and try to solve this problem, this is the only time that I can do it. And so I kind of like I quit my job in the hospital and moved in with my parents to save money, and I just tried to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think in hindsight, yeah, like when you're early, you have like infinite ambition and you just kind of just take risks that you don't think you would do it later on in life. I mean, spoiler alert, I think for now, like later on in life, I'm in my 30s. Like I still think that we underestimate the amount of risk that we can take. But that's aside the point.
I totally agree. By the way, as life goes on, it's not like you get less and less responsibilities. You just get more obligations. That's the one thing I keep collecting as time goes on is obligations.
Yeah.
It's like you get older, you don't have as much energy, you have more to lose. That's kind of the
Mhm.
key point. Like you will never be at a point in your life where you have less to lose than right now. Even if it feels like you have so much to lose, you never have less to lose than right now. Because so long as you're someone who's hardworking, which I assume that the people listening are, and somebody who's like thinking about the future, you will continue to improve. You will continue to get better and accumulate more resources. So it's now or never.
Yeah. So walk us through, Ray, like as far as like, okay, you made the decision, you're like, all right, screw it, like I'm gonna do this. So you started renting out, like putting more time into it, figuring out how to make a better customer experience, or what was that journey like for you? And like how did you go from like one car to two cars?
Right. Awesome question. So again, let's go back to the beginning where at this point I was so broke, I was living in New York because that's where my family was. That's how I could afford to, have a roof over my head. Every time I'd travel to Boston, I'd take a Greyhound bus and I'd sleep in my car because that would be, where I could afford to stay. And at the time I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to share out and rent out this vehicle. And the inspiration was like, look, this car is basically a computer on wheels, right? It's the most intelligent system we've ever seen in a vehicle. I can connect to it online and I can start directing it, giving it commands, monitoring, doing all this amazing stuff. The catch is I'm a biomedical engineer, not a software engineer. I have no idea how to do this, right? So by some friend of a friend, as I was asking around, I found this guy who, was like some guy I'd kind of always kind of overlapped in college, never really met, but was a friend of a friend. And I just made him a deal. I was like, listen, I can't pay you. There's no funding coming. Like at this point, I didn't even understand the concept of funding. I said, here's the deal. I have this vision of how I think that this car can be rented out, and I want to keep growing a fleet. And I actually want to establish one all over the country. If you build me the very first system, here are the parameters, right? I will give you free access to the cars for life. How's that for a perk? And it was like, done. So, we got to work and we started putting it together. And we got to a point where it was manageable enough that the operations headache kind of dropped down a little bit by a little bit by a little bit. Suddenly the car went from burning a hole in my pocket to bringing in a little bit of money. And I was like, okay, I bring this to my dad. I'm like, hey, how would you like to invest another car into this program? And he's like, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. So my
Uh,
dad comes in, uses his personal credit, gets a second car, and bam, we're from one car to two cars.
Wow. Very cool. And yeah, I think we I mean like entrepreneurs like you're just like so resourceful, right? And I think you know like people coming from the traditional way in life, they just think like, oh, you know, money has to buy everything. But no, I think bartering is one of the most like effective ways to do it. Because then you know you're not paying taxes on it or something, right? He's not paying income tax. He gets a great perk that he finds value in, right? It's a
It's
win-win.
true. It's also like, don't never underestimate the power of making people feel like they have a unique perk that can't be bought with money. You know, this
Hmm.
is the difference between, imagine a rich person goes into a restaurant, doesn't matter how much money he's got. He goes in and he's like, hey, I want to have a table for me and my wife. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, sir. The reservations are all booked. Everything's full. I'm sorry. And now contrast that with like a mafia don. He walks into the restaurant. They're like, "Oh, sir, we've been waiting for you. We saved the best table." It doesn't matter how much money he's got in his pocket. It's that he has that perk that will resonate always so much more for most people. Truly, like if you find the thing that gets them going, than money.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, for us, like when we're operating our properties, like we have some like on-site managers, and they just truly enjoy like having that responsibility of being kind of like the steward of the community.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
money's not everything.
Respect is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, how did you like initially, you know, like get the word out? Did you rely on like I don't know, like Facebook, Instagram ads, or like was it word of mouth? Like how did you kind of like build up and like get the momentum and like test out the product market fit, as people say?
Great question. Excellent question. So one of the things that's really weird about us as a company is that even to this day, we've never run an ad.
Hmm,
And frankly, I'm not saying that that's the best way to go. A lot of companies run ads and they know what they're doing and they're really, really good at it. I just never figured it out well. And I just, first I didn't have the money to put into it. And then afterwards, I'm like, well, I'm really good at building the product and figuring out how to make it a little bit better. That's what I'm going to focus on. And the marketing and advertising didn't really happen. Instead, it was really a combination of word of mouth and very good and lucky timing when it came to SEO. We had a domain that ranked pretty well, and we figured out pretty quickly that we could build some landing pages and use those to target and kind of get free promotion on Google via SEO. And that just became like the strategy going forward. We rely on our returning users, make it so that it's a really undeniably good experience when you're renting a car, and then try and get out there for the people who are actually searching for it, get the right keywords. And of course, we existed in a very specific niche. We were just renting Teslas. So we worked really, really hard to get every single keyword for Tesla rental and all the variations. And that was kind of it. And that was something we could afford to do. Ads
yeah,
at the time we couldn't.
yeah. You know, it's funny, and we were talking about this right before we hit record. So I used to work for Tesla, and you know, when I was like renting a car, I think that's pretty much like how I found you guys. Is I was like looking up like Teslas for rent, and then like this website popped up. So that's exactly it. It's like organic reach.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the coolest experiences that I've had. I could say that this is like a milestone in the business for me, that like we reached out to you and said, we love your podcast. Maybe we could have a conversation. And you said, I've actually rented from you guys. I've used you guys before. That's so cool to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, small world, right?
Big
And
time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that creates for such a I mean, maybe it's a combination of luck or something, but like Tesla and how they initially sold their car, it was like largely referral based. They had like referral programs like, hey, refer two people or like one person, you get like free rims or something. I don't know, something like that. And like it was built on that. And like kind of Tesla owners just naturally had that mentality of like, I want to refer people, I want to share something good with the community. Maybe that helped.
Big time. I think we, like I said, we went into a space where the product sold itself to the right audience. So I think, again, looking back at who I was back then, I've solved a lot of problems. This one was just pure luck. I lucked into, being at the right place with the right kind of concept with the right audience.
Yeah, and I do want to point out kind of like the a potential misconception of people in general is like they think that luck is everything. I mean, I would say hard work is the entry ticket to success. Luck is what determines what prize you win.
Yep, it's true. Look, I'll put it this way. Right now, it's easy to sit here and talk and say, it was luck. We got started off really well, and then now everything's great, easy, and this is how, this is the dream. But the reality is that, this business went through so many unbelievable crises and challenges. Like I almost lost the business 5 times in the course of 8 years. That's like almost a crisis per year. That's enough to have aged me, 10 to 20 years at basis. But one thing that is like really critical is that a lot of those really tough moments and moments of doubt and moments where things are really flying off the rails, if you do it right, like that's all front loaded, which is really kind of nice in a sense. Because once you kind of get past that gap, you're any businessman like is wise enough to know that yes, everything could go to zero at any given moment. That's true. But you know, the reality is that if you believe in something and you stick to something and you're willing to sacrifice and commit to it, most of those sacrifices and hard days are at the start, and then there comes a point where you do get a chance to kind of look back and breathe and be like, okay, we don't have to deal with that kind of crisis anymore. And that does make a really big impact when you're thinking about, do I want to push myself further and further into this?
Hmm. So maybe tell us about like one of those times like that you almost like lost the business. Like how did it feel? Like how did you get through it? Because like I mean I could definitely relate to that. And there is so much that falls on the entrepreneur to like kind of just like keep slugging it out and like keep going. And like as long as you don't give up, like you can't lose.
Yeah. So I think one of the most like it maybe wasn't the riskiest moment in the business's history, but like one of the ones that felt the most painful and demoralizing at the time was like this. I'd come up to realize that I wanted to build this into a platform, into a real nationwide platform, and not just like a small rental fleet that I owned, but be able to bring in other people's cars and allow them to share their vehicles on the network. And so it became pretty clear that if I want to build a tech company, which is what this is, I have to raise capital. I don't know any very, very, very few tech companies are built, especially marketplace tech companies are built without capital. So I embarked on a quest with that guy, who I hired initially with the deal with the lifetime access to the cars, right? I brought him in as a co-founder because we had read all the, YC docs about how they love to see co-founders. They don't like solo founders. They want to see technical and sales, right? And so we started raising, going through the process of raising capital, right? And so that process took 2 years of, going back and forth with this investor, that investor, trying to get, meetings, pitch decks, refining things. And this is way before AI. So like everything we had to do by hand. There was no like, oh, here's my idea, print me a slideshow, It was like we had to do all the graphics ourselves and everything. And it culminated with, I decided, okay, we're going to do it all the way through. I flew to LA, to Miami, to New York, to Boston, to San Francisco. And finally I spent a good 2 months in Silicon Valley sleeping in a van. Like literally my dad had this beat up, Honda Odyssey, and I was sleeping in that and every morning, like waking up, going to the gym, brushing my teeth, taking a shower and going to pitch, and then going that night, going to sleep in a van. Like literally, like it's almost like a cartoon version of raising money. And finally, at the end of it, an investor finally said, okay, you know what? I see what you're saying. After 2 years, here's a term sheet. So let's make this happen. I call my partner and I share the good news. And of course, we're overhyped and over the moon. And literally the next day, my co founder that I brought on says, "Hey, bad news. My mom's really sick. I'm going to have to take off and be with her. Best of luck. Hopefully, I get to talk to you again." Literally
Yeah.
like that. Like literally,
Wow.
literally like that.
That's crazy.
And, and this moment of like, oh my God, not just like, not just like disappointment, but betrayal.
Mm,
Because look, let's be real. And, this is kind of verified afterwards. That was
yeah.
an excuse. There's no sick mom. And that doesn't happen in the 12-hour gap between hearing that we're going to get an investor and not. And so there was just this moment of like, crap, what now? Like all of this work, all of this stuff, like this dream is going to disintegrate. So yeah, it's like there are really tough
Yeah.
moments like that.
And what happened when you, like, worked through it? Like, what'd you do afterwards? Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, I kinda sat with myself for a little bit, you know? Like, I vividly recall, like, sitting in the van for literally an hour looking at the steering wheel, just like and, like, I kept saying to myself, like, "You'll get through it. This is just another" like, I had this picture in my head. I was like, "Okay, this is just imagine you're a big stone block, right? Somebody comes to you with a chisel and a hammer and they just smash you, and it's like they chip away a little piece of your block, and at first you're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I can't believe this happened to me. But then like when you think about it, you're like, okay, how many more chips do I need to take before I actually become like a sculpture? Like right now I'm a block, right? But like I can't become a sculpture without this. This is just part of the story. It just has to be a part of what comes next. Okay. And I said, you know what? We're going to take this into an advantage. And so I resolved, like within that day, like I went back to the investors and I told them, guys, listen, here's what happened. I don't know where this came from. It's a complete shock. Obviously, I'm well aware that you're not going to continue with the investment with half the team missing. But bear with me. I want you to take this as an opportunity to actually see how I handle this crisis as the founder and CEO of this company. And I want you to give me a month. And when I come back to you in a month, if you like what you see then I would like for you to reconsider. Right. And so they're like, okay, we'll give you a month. And I then went on a holy quest again across the country to find another co-founder, and by the end of it, not only did I find, another person that could come in and take on the engineering, I also found a head of operations and I actually built like a full-fledged team with far more experience than my previous partner. And I went back to the investors and I said, here you go. What do you guys say? And you know what? To their credit, they were impressed and they were like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
The story continues, but I'll stop it there for a second.
Yeah, I would love to hear how it continues, but, yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of us, like, entrepreneurs, like, we go through something similar, and, like, I mean, I went through something very similar too, So, for me, like, building Cornell communities, we it was, like, initially me and a co-founder, and we did everything together. It's like a lot of hustle. And, at one point, he was like, yeah, like my heart's not in it. Like, good luck. I'm going this separate direction. And yeah, I felt the exact same thing, man. It was like everything I knew up till that point, like my definition of my career was just like, whoa, what now? And yeah, I mean, I felt betrayed, like all the doubts and the questions and stuff. I mean, look, now I wish him well and like we're still good friends and stuff. But, at the moment, it was tough, man. You're like,
Yeah.
"What the heck do I do now?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. You really feel stuck. You feel like you feel like you got punched in the belly.
Yeah, totally. I know that exact feeling. And yeah, how I got through it is like, I just reached out to a lot of people for help. And that was kind of the moment where I was forced to ask for help. Like for me, like I'm very independent, like I never ask people for help, that kind of thing. But then like realizing like, hey, I have good people by me. I have a strong network. I'm a good human being and people like to help good people. And
Yes.
I've gotten like so many like useful kind of perspectives from that and we kind of build back stronger, which is great.
Absolutely. I think one of the most powerful lessons you can figure out as an entrepreneur is how to ask for help, who to ask for help, and also sometimes to realize that you're capable of doing it too. And you don't need, not always do you need to, run around and say, I need this thing. You can actually sometimes, you can rely on yourself, but you do also need to be able to rely on others. And that's like it's more of an art than a science. But when you figure that one out, I think it's the most powerful tool in your belt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the realization, for me after a while is like, yeah, I mean, I can have some partners and some employees and team members, but I don't necessarily need like a co-founder. It was just like the company's already gotten like product market fit. It's just like, it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense to bring on someone like that anymore.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things I wanted to bring up because the rest of the story gets even more interesting, right? So I come back to these investors. I'm like, look at this amazing team. They're like, wow, we love it. Here's the term sheet. We go out to celebrate. We're all out there at the bar, and the night's kind of winding down. And this guy that I brought on to replace as an engineer, to come in as the new co-founder, he kind of pulls me aside at the end, and he's like, "Hey, Ray, listen, we got to talk." I'm like, okay, what's up? And he's like, well, I've been looking at the code, I've been looking at the systems, and, I've got a lot of concerns. I'm like, I know, we've been going through it with a fine tooth comb over the past 2 weeks. You've told me everything that you're thinking. He's like, well, I'm thinking we probably need to build it back from scratch. And so to me, the only way that this is going to work is if we do this 50-50. Like, so for context, we had already negotiated equity, salary, everything. The business had already been making more than $1 million in revenue per year at that point. It was profitable all by itself. And we get this term sheet to scale it. And this guy tells me, well, I need you to give me half of your business if you want me to stay on. And it was really obvious too that, like he was waiting for that exact moment where we had the term sheet so he could leverage it against me. Cause he knows that, if he walks away now, I look super foolish. The deal falls apart. Now he must have thought he was being really clever, but what's kind of really stupid about this whole thing is that you would know, as any investor would know, that if you're going to invest in a company and then that, company that you're about to invest in suddenly gives away half of its equity for free to somebody who just joined, you're going to be like, well, you're not going to be like, wow, that guy's worth millions and millions of dollars to stay on. You're going to be like, this company's worthless. Why would I
Yeah.
invest in this?
Right.
It's super stupid. But
Hmm.
the lesson from that was exactly what you're saying. There comes a point where you were bringing on a co-founder, in my opinion, when the company's already up off the ground, when it's already making money, got product market fit, potentially profitable. That's like, coming to find a parent for your child, once they're 14. It's like the baby's already born, like
Yeah.
you can have a discussion what kind of kid you want to have before you have it, but like once he's 14, you're bringing in a parent, then they're just going to mess it up, right? So you
Hmm.
have to be really, really careful. I think us as entrepreneurs, we also have this mindset of like, we're going to build this. We want to build this with someone. We want to go out there and like create something, and we want to have people on our team who share the vision. The reality is you get to a point where you have to value what you've built at its actual value, not what you valued it when you were just starting out, right? Because you have added value and you need to recognize that.
Yeah, totally, totally. I think people underestimate the ability of themselves. At some point in life, life just drives you to make a decision. And for me, it was like, all right, man, put your big boy pants on. Let's go. You
Yeah.
can do
It's
this.
it's true. Yeah, and what's cool is that every time, this is one of the joys and pleasures that we get as entrepreneurs. Every time you push through one of those challenges in your business life, it reinforces to you that identity that I can solve problems. Something comes along your way, like I don't know when the last time that you kind of looked at something and despaired and said, "Oh my god, it's over." Like that doesn't exist for us anymore. You're like, okay, what needs to happen for this to be solved? And it's something that carries over into the next thing that you do, whether it's your workouts, whether it's your relationships, your hobbies. You're just like, okay, I want to solve this. How much do I want to put in to solve this? Let's make it happen.
And it's so interesting that you say that. Part of why I enjoyed like being an entrepreneur is like kind of who I become along the path. Because like for us, like okay, we have different businesses, and like for my specific business, like I defer a lot of the financial like reward until like the very end after like my investors get paid and whatnot. So like for me, it's more so like what keeps me going is like who I become. Like I become a better leader. I know like how to build a team. I know how to build systems and like build solution and scale it up. So I think that's like infinitely more valuable. And like when you talk to like a regular person with like a regular job, not like looking down on it or whatever, but it's just like a very different mentality. They're like, why would you do it that way?
It's
But
a
for
different way
us,
to
it
see
just
the
makes perfect
world.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different like, sometimes I'll talk to some of my friends that are not, they're not entrepreneurs, they don't have a side hustle, and they're like, "Oh my god, the world is so bad. Everything it's things are so tough, things are so this," you know? And you kinda just wanna look at them and be like, "What's going on in your life? Like, what do you need to fix? Go fix it," you know? Like, and they're like, "No, the world is messed up. The world is awful." It's like, "Yeah, but forget about the world. Your circle of what affects you." It's like it's how we prioritize the problems around us. We're like, okay, step one, like what do you actually need to fix in your life? Step one, step two, step three. And I think you're right. It's just a different mentality that you gain by going on this journey.
Yeah. And one more thing before I change topics, but I think for me, like as an entrepreneur, it might not be the same for other people, but there's always the sense of like risk. It's always like, okay, what if I lose it all, and like how do you build back? And like, yeah, I mean, you realize that you will not lose it all, and like on the contrary too, like you will never start from scratch again. Like the stereotypical story of like, okay, you take a wealthy person, you take away all his money, his assets and stuff, but like he'll just make it right back in a year, and
Yes.
like it's very true.
It's so true because even if tomorrow you wake up and all of your bank accounts and assets are drained, you have your relationships that you've built. You have people that trust your integrity, people that come to you with deal flow, people that, you know, are willing to work with you and for you to build a vision that you believe in. So, whatever it is that you want to get to, just get to it. I think that this is maybe the most important kind of lesson of entrepreneurship. Like I only kind of realized this I'm now 8 years into this journey, right? But it's such a cliche, but it actually doesn't matter what you've built or how long it took you. It's that you've developed this mindset that makes every door open for you. And that's to me what it means to be an entrepreneur. It's because like you've gone through the hard stakes. You've gotten those chips, you've gotten your brick like chiseled away until you kind of formed into what you are. But that's what gives you the real value. That's what's intangible and that can't be taken away from you.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. So okay, so switching topics really quickly, just back to kind of your company. Okay, so we're at the point where like, okay, you kind of just realize like, okay, like maybe I can do this, maybe I can. And I mean, from then until now, I mean, now you have like what, like thousands of vehicles in your fleet. Like, what was that like? What was kind of like the hardest bottlenecks that you had to solve for to kind of build this company up to this level?
Yeah. So there's so many different ones. And I mean, we could get really technical, but like, especially like, first of all, it's a marketplace. Every marketplace needs a critical mass in order to function. So that's number one. The second one is in terms of, insurance, safety. It's really like you look at the car rental industry or just mobility generally. It's a scale thing, right? It's economies of scale all the way down. So getting to that, place where it kind of has its own gravity, that took the most amount of time. I would say like from year 1 to year 5, okay, I only had 2 people at the company, myself and, my then co-founder. From year 5 to year 8, we're now at 15, right? So like that explosion kind of happens only after you've done all the difficult things, after you've gone through all the, the traumas, so to speak. And for a lot of companies, by the way, funding is critical for this kind of thing because it allows you to kind of get over that hump that would otherwise take you 6 freaking years, 5, 6 years to get to a place where you can actually talk and think about scaling. But, and maybe this is a useful metaphor for a lot of people, right? For our company specifically, I'm so glad we didn't end up getting that term sheet realized and that we didn't end up actually taking funding because it also forced us to do things right. One of the things, especially in the mobility space, right? If you look at all the mobility startups that came over the past 15 years, like 99% of them don't exist anymore. And that's because it's an industry that is not conducive to fast, rapid growth. It's an industry that's conducive to properly tinkering until you get it right and only then starting to scale. And by the way, that's not what investors want to hear or see. Investors want ROI right now. They gave you money. I want that thing to be doubled in 6 months. Let's go. And that's their right. That's what they're doing. But that's basically how all of these other mobility startups blew up
Mm,
super big, ended up having zero unit economics, had massively endemic problems that could not be solved just by more money or like, fixes at the end. They just built it wrong. they built it in the way that a SaaS model is built, where you're assuming marginal costs of scale, right? And instead, it's an operations business where you do have people on the ground with real costs, real operations, real liabilities. So that's why, for us, and again, the metaphor here is that, for the typical entrepreneur, I really think that you do need to go through these tough early days, because whether if you maybe if you manage to raise money on your very first startup and it goes great, frankly, unless you're born brilliant, you're likely not going to be a good leader or a good user of judgment if you just had like a smooth upward success on your first few years. Like, you really have to struggle through it, I think, to be able to develop that judgment that, we said at the beginning was so important.
Yeah, and I think so. So for me, I went to a Tony Robbins conference a couple years back, and like one of the most significant learnings that I had when I was out there is that to succeed, you have to fail, and you have to succeed at failing to succeed.
Yeah, it's well said. It's so true.
And people don't understand it, and they don't embody it, especially, like, when you're in, like, corporate world, like, you're used to, like, "Okay, then I get a promotion, then I get this, then I get that." Versus, like, entrepreneurship, like, you can, like, do very well, and then, like, boom, this thing hits, like, COVID hits, like, all your revenue's gone or something, and then, like, how do you rebuild? Co-founder leaves, boom, like, lawsuit, boom, like, what happens, right? So, yeah, that's, undying resilience and belief in yourself.
It's just something that you have to assume when you go into this space. Like, so many people want to start their own business, and I wish that so many more people would start their own business. But you kind of have to get into it with the mindset of like,
Yeah.
this is going to be a shit show for a long time. But then, of course, it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And looking back, Ray, I mean, just on your journey so far, like, would you have done anything differently, or if like to a newer entrepreneur, like, would you give them like a piece of advice to try to like shortcut their journey in this?
I think that the best advice that I could give both myself and somebody who might just be starting out is like, do whatever you can to have fun. Like, at the end of the day, like, we all kind of implicitly understand that, like, you got to treat your co-founder well if you have one, for them to like give you good output and for you guys to have a great relationship so that you can trust them to do good decisions and bring the company forward. But you rarely ever see yourself as your own co-founder, right? So we have this tendency to just like, push, push, drive, drive, drive. You suck at this. You didn't do that right. You failed the deal. You screwed the pooch, whatever it is, right? And that's just not true. Like, you gotta enjoy being with yourself, right? Because it's actually going to be with yourself that you're in those trenches with, right? You're the one who's going to be depending on you. And if you're going to be depending on you, you got to take care of you. You got to make sure that you are having a good time, like, and so whatever that takes, even if it's like small silly things that you end up doing, like, for example, in the early days, like, we'd have people steal cars, like, they take the car, they drive it like all the way across the country, and now you're like, oh my god, how do I get this thing back? Okay, so it's like, okay, well, there's no choice. I took my girlfriend at the time, we're doing a trip down to South Carolina, we're gonna have a a 3-day trip, we're gonna do a road trip, and it's like, that's and like, we sold it to each other as like, we're gonna have a great time, this is gonna be fun, we're gonna go eat fried chicken. Otherwise, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe my life is hell, because otherwise it can be.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, okay, going to the looking forward, right? When you're okay, like you are here right now as an entrepreneur, like where are you going to take your company moving forward? Like, what are you solving for? How do you know what questions to solve for when you're building into the next stage?
That's an amazing question. So first of all, our next stage is, I've had a lot of people ask me, are you going to start taking this into the home sharing space? Are you going to start sharing boats? The reality is no. We're going to be hyper focused on what we do really well and what our competence sphere encompasses. And that means we're going to make sure that these vehicles that people own, whether they're a private individual or, a large car rental company, can be rented out and shared as safely, as easily, as frictionlessly as possible. We have so many different features that we want to bring this in and turn this into a lifestyle, right? So, right now, the Eon experience is pretty intuitive. You book the car that you want, you show up to the location, your phone becomes a Bluetooth key, doesn't need to be connected to the internet. You walk up to the car, it unlocks automatically for you. You get in and you go. It's that beautiful. But there are still so many more things that we want to build into it and make it even more convenient, more easy to use, right? So in New York, we're launching a on-demand charging feature where if you're in a pinch, you can actually book one of our partners' trucks to come out to your car and literally charge your car, on the street. They come with a battery, they plug you in, and like you wake up in the morning, you got a full charge, right? We're building features for subscription models in the future. We have a vision where, you could be an Eon member, and for the first time in the history of this space, your car is like your gym membership, right? You just have one monthly subscription payment. And then I'm 2 days in Nashville, I'll have a car for 2 days. I'm 5 days in New York, I'll have a car there. And it's all part of your bundled subscription, right? We have so many different ideas and so many different ways to take this, make it even more convenient, activate it for more types of cars, scale this out so that more and more people have access. And that's really what we're focused on. We want to make sure that this is ready. We're looking at autonomous vehicles when they come in and how to make sure that, we're able to integrate with and provide, autonomous vehicles for when you need to go on a road trip. One of the misconceptions is, okay, Waymo is going to take over the entire car rental industry. It might take over Uber, but the reality is nobody's Ubering to the Grand Canyon from LA today. So when you want to actually do a road trip to the Grand Canyon, you want to rent your own car, but you want it to drive itself, right? And that's where we would come in as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we look at it, and it's basically a how much can we get done as fast as possible kind of approach.
Makes sense. And it's almost like what would increase the happiness of our customers and like what makes sense to build out, right?
Yeah, look, the decision making, this sounds so dumb, but it's also like it's honest, right? When we're thinking how do we want to, like, what do we build next, right? I actually think of myself as a user for what I want to build next. I'm my own customer, right? I This is like the dog fooding approach to tech, right? I live in New York. I don't like to own a car in the city. It's a total nightmare. But, I just took my team on a retreat to Tennessee, so we're all in like a big house in Tennessee right now. Well, I want to make sure that when I land at the airport, I have a car that's ready to go, charged. I don't have to talk to anyone. I literally just walk up, get in and go. And I want it to tell me like give me reminders of, every step that I need to take if there's any. And I want that experience to be completely frictionless. So I look at myself, I'm like, if I can make that for myself, then that's what I want to build for the company. And to me, that's I'm not out there with spreadsheets going like, okay, this and that. I'm like, what do I want next?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I love it. Well, no, thank you for all the wisdom that you've shared, Ray. This is an amazing episode. So to wrap up, how can folks reach out to you? Like, who are you looking to meet? How can we help you?
Of course, obviously tell people about Eon, try out the app, see how much better it is the next time you travel. We're now in like you said, Leo, at the top, 50 plus cities across the US. If you have a Tesla or an EV that you're considering sharing and earning some passive income on, check us out, eonrides.com. You can reach me at LinkedIn, Rei Vardi, and yeah, it's basically it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your wisdom.
Thanks so much, Leo. I had a blast talking to you.